that's true. So far, we haven't distinguished any of these three spaces yet. All right angles are congruent, meaning there's not several types of right angles. There's just one. All right? And that's Euclid's first four axioms. And they don't distinguish these three spaces. So you need something that does distinguish them, like this no lines, one line, or infinitely many lines through some other point that don't meet yours. And so you have this basic axiomatic system here of Euclid, and then you can either decide whether parallelism holds in your space or not. Or better said, you can look and see whether it does, and see which model you're in. Right? So it's not a matter of, is the parallel postulate true, which is something that was believed for 2 millennia. It's when is it true? Where is it true? A whole different sort of perspective. And certainly you can't have both parallelism and non-parallelism in the same place. That's a contradiction. You can't do that. Right? But independently, you can have one system that has it and a different one that has it. And they're both true, but you can't do them at the same time. Okay? So here's another example from the art world. Some of you might recognize this already. I can name this picture in one slide. It looks like a building with stairs, and the people on the outside are walking up. The people on the inside are walking down. Would you say that's true? This is what I did on my summer vacation. The people on the outside are still walking up, and then they're going to take a right turn. Nothing wrong with these pictures, right? Just a normal building that you might see anywhere with people walking around in hoods. And another picture, sure enough, they're the same sort of thing. Nothing wrong with this building, right? Same thing. They just keep walking up. Wait. You can't walk up forever, right? It's when you put these together that you suddenly realize there's an illusion going on here. There's a contradiction going on here. You can't walk up forever. But individually, each piece looks fine, right? I bring this up as a nice analogy to things that we do in voting. There's lots of ways for a group to come to a consensus about something. So, having a dictator is one way. It's a nice way. It saves committee meetings. That's Dieter's favorite way, right? He's our chair. Let's go, he's our chair if he can't. No. So what are some ways? You could either decide, like you have a bunch of candidates and you could rank them from 1 to 10 if there's 10 candidates, say, and decide how many points each ranking is worth and that sort of thing. It's kind of, some people call it a Borda method. You could just decide some of the people you think would be okay and some of the people you wouldn't want. And so that's kind of approval voting, they call it. That's another nice method. Or you could decide everybody has to pick just one, their favorite, right? Like most of the things we do when we elect our officials. You just get one choice. And there's pros and cons to all these methods. So, for example, I'll give you one quick example. Is I think in the 1980 election, Reagan was going against Carter, right? And Reagan won. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But there was a third guy, Anderson. Anderson Ford out here, I think. I shouldn't say that because some of the younger people are going to believe me. But that's half the fun. A lot of my students, they know I lie a lot. So Anderson, it turns out, if you had a different method of voting than everybody just picking their favorite, say it was approval voting, you got to say, oh, this one's good, that one's good too, and I don't like that one. Anderson would have won that election. Completely different president. Anderson had something like a 70% approval rating. And the winner had something like a 40% approval rating. Now, this isn't after he did some things, whether or not you disagree with him. I'm talking about at the election time, right? And Carter's was a little less at 37 or something like that. But so here we have a system that we're not electing the one that everybody wants. It's kind of unusual. So the method that you decide for voting is critical. And you certainly, no matter what method you want, you'd like to have some basic premises. You'd like to have some things which Should be true. Maybe we shouldn't have a dictator, right? This is America after all, right? Here's another one they call irrelevant independence. It means that, well, say the general populace wanted Reagan over Carter. It shouldn't change whether people like Reagan over Carter if there's a third one, if Anderson's in there, right? It might change who wins, but it shouldn't change the relationship between Reagan and Carter, right? That seems a basic sort of tenet. Throw somebody in the ring or remove somebody out and it changes your opinions. That's weird. Monotonicity is, well, it's easier to just read it. Increasing a candidate's rank on your ballot shouldn't hurt them. If you want your candidate to do better, increase their ranking. Right? That should be how it works, and that's what this says, a basic, obvious thing that you'd want. Here's another one. Every conceivable outcome is achievable. It's kind of a fairness thing. What one candidate could achieve is the same as what another one could achieve. So it seems fair that you have all of these four axioms. They sound reasonable. The one that's interesting, very interesting, happened recently in 2002, I think it was, at the Winter Olympics. Do you remember the ladies' figure skating championships? This was the one Michelle Kwan and Irina Slutskaya and Sarah Hughes were in. And Kwan was the favorite, and she was the last to skate. And at the time, Slutskaya was in first place, and Hughes was in second place. And, well, Kwan, if she skates her normal, she'd have won, got the gold, and Sarah Hughes would get the bronze, right? But if she didn't skate well and got maybe a bad score, then Sarah Hughes would get bumped up and she'd be the silver medalist, right? But what happened? Anybody remember? Kwan fell on her face. She did so poorly that it swapped Hughes and Slutskaya. Hughes won the gold. Doesn't that seem outrageous? The commentators, the reports in the papers all over the place were just outraged. This is crazy. This is rigged. This is all sorts of things. It's not rigged. What happens is Kenneth Arrow, who got a Nobel Prize in economics for some of this work in 1972, proved that you can't have all these things. You just can't. It doesn't matter how smart and clever you are. It doesn't matter what the political climate is. It's impossible. You can't have all these things. It's like the four corners of that picture. They're fine all by themselves, but not together. All right? And this was, word we use for this is the voting system axioms are inconsistent. So if you have a fairness, you have monotonicity, and you have this, you avoid the Hughes problem, the only way to do it is to have a dictator. Or another way is if you have fairness and you have monotonicity and you don't have a dictator, then you're stuck with this Hughes problem. You can't avoid it. And that's the nature of decision making. It doesn't matter what method, any of these things. So it's a nice example of some system that's inconsistent in the word that we use for it. What we try to do when we're modeling truth or thought, whatever it is you're sort of modeling, mathematics, language, whatever, you start with some axioms, some postulates, some basic tenets that you believe to be true, whatever that means. And then from there you build a language. You say, these are what these words mean. Here's how you put them together. You have some syntax, rules of grammar to say what makes a sentence before you even can ask a question of whether it's true or false. Does it have meaning? And you go on from there. So let me make this a little more concrete. When kids first start to learn to speak, they learn some basic words, right? And they don't look them up in the dictionary. It's experience, right? You connect what you hear with what you see, and okay, that must be a tree.